I wanted to talk a little bit about the, what the process looks like from within the core team, the DNN core team, because obviously I know that to some of you this is what it feels like, the core team, and to us sometimes that is what it feels like. And of course the reality is somewhere in between. We have, I can unequivocally say, there is a genuine desire within the community, you guys, and the core team, to modernize the framework, the DNN, the DNN as a whole. But there's a ton of bottlenecks that we can, I think most of you will understand that are there. Backwards compatibility, obviously, we don't want to break people's sites. The availability of us to actually check code. And we're not getting paid to do this. And I would like to posit just one thing. The checking of code is probably a similar effort as to creating the code, right? So in terms of hours invested, and if you really want to understand code, you have to almost redo the work of whoever is submitting a pull request. There's always distractions, right? So there's all of a sudden we're going here, but then all of a sudden there's a security issue that comes in, and we have to drop everything that we're doing, and we have to roll out very quickly a new bug fix version, hide the security fix somewhere, right? That's another neat kind of challenge. If you like puzzling, that's really something that is often a puzzle. Like, okay, we found this loophole somewhere, and now we're going to wrap the fix to it all into a bigger PR that touches various bits and pieces of code, so that people who monitor the project from the outside don't immediately see what if a gaping security hole there is in some part of the framework. Obviously prioritizing meaning not necessarily the oldest PR that gets integrated the first. There's always a balance of like, okay, what is more important to roll out now versus the others. About being a human being, I think that's the maybe the most delicate aspect of it is we all have a different perspective on what DNN does, what it is, what it means to people, and what is important therefore to do. I will give you an example, and I've been talking to several of you about this as well. There are people who have clients who run on one module. For instance, they have the most typical example would be Too Sexy content on DNN, right? You can build entire websites, of course, just DNN and Too Sexy content. Don't need anything else. Now, for them, if it doesn't touch Too Sexy content, or if the code change doesn't touch Too Sexy content, then all of a sudden, not a big thing. Go ahead. If something needs to be fixed that is important for Too Sexy content, then all of a sudden that becomes a high priority item. So you have a certain perspective on things. But also when we talk about potential futures with MVC Pipeline, .NET Core, and everything. For them, the world is relatively simple, which is, well, you update DNN, you update Too Sexy content, you have your site, and you're now on whatever new version we have. But others have a clientele where the clients themselves have developed their own modules on top of DNN, or they've asked us to develop custom modules for them on their site. Now for them, it gets more threatening because all of a sudden, like, oh, but if there's a change in DNN, I will need to update all those modules. Usually it's not there that the pain lies. The pain lies having to sell to the client that they now have to reinvest to update all their modules. And I vouch to say that every time that we make a breaking change, we're always going to lose a few of those clients, right? A few of them are going to go like, oh yeah, you know what, I'm not putting that extra money in, I'm abandoning this framework, I'm going to go to something else. And yes, there's always the long-term code maintenance, so whenever you do get PRs in, I know it's up to us to take a long-term view on this. Like, how does this code fit in with a long-term strategy for DNN? Is it a good fit for the community as well? Is it code that is clear, legible, right? And we do a lot of, I'm sure, who has worked on the platform code? For a quick question. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so whenever you make some change to the code, you will see lots of squiggly lines appear, and often red, meaning you can't recompile. And often for things that are frustratingly irrelevant to what you're trying to do, which is, well, you need with an if statement, for instance, in C#, we want the curly braces to be there, right? And if not, it doesn't compile. But also if and then the curly braces, there's no empty line behind it, it also doesn't compile, because that's another code cop, style cop rule that was built in. And yeah, that can be quite frustrating, although GitHub Copilot does a better and better job at when I just click, look, you fix these stupid things, right, on how the code was written, and it's actually able to do that. But it can be frustrating at times. So you sometimes feel that when you're doing stuff to the core code that you're rowing through treacle, right? Like, oh God, this is going slow, and it's painful. But we do that because of that last point. Like, okay, but we all want to be able to have a kind of similar sort of code that I can easily read and understand, because if you who's contributed code have moved on to better pastures, we still need to be able to understand that code and read through it if something goes wrong and something needs to be fixed. So those are some of the bottlenecks that in my experience, we get. So time and time resources, edge cases as well. So I talked earlier about, in my presentation about the CDF, someone who had used DNN CSS include to include fonts, which, yes, they render as a link, but they're not CSS, they are font. So what you get is, that was an unforeseen scenario for me when I was creating that code. So stuff had to be updated again. And it broke, obviously, his site at first. And various upgrade scenarios. The upgrade scenarios are touched on earlier in the introduction that we had, that we now have a new upgrade process to take care of a lot of these upgrade scenarios. Yeah, I would argue that if we look forward, the ideal world, if we want to get off of Microsoft hosting services, we'd love to have Linux-based hosting, containerization if possible, and another holy grail, like, can we get off SQL Server and maybe move to Postgres, and can we get out of big tech in any meaningful way? And that, of course, requires a number of changes, and the most important one, of course, moving to .NET Core. So that's the elephant in the room. The approach taken, right, by Sasha is to go with baby steps, move to MVC Pipeline, propose a new way to do a module. That new way of doing a module would be mostly compatible with what we would do in .NET Core. Of course, there are no guarantees here because everything still needs to materialize as we move forward. But in our best estimate, that's the way we do it. But I think very, very soon you're going to have a discussion whether that should be done as a fork or as a series of gradual upgrades. And the reason we inevitably end up there is that we, the ones that are contributing this code, move with one speed, and the core team, with their checking of code, moves at another speed. They're not synchronized, and I haven't found a way to synchronize those two, even though I participate on both sides. I can't check the code myself and get it into the core. I do need other people within the core team to check with me, right? It's just not allowed by policy. So one of the ways to solve this would be to say, you know what, let's just part ways here, and we have a fork, right? So that we can just run on and move forward with as a .NET Core version. It's been done before. Example is, for instance, Orchard. Orchard split into Orchard and Orchard Core for a while, so they had two versions running in parallel. Overlooking just everything that has happened over the past year, and looking at what we can do in the core team, my estimate is currently, as of today, it might change again in the future, but my estimate today is that we are going to end up with two parallel versions, right? At least for a considerable time. I find it hard to imagine that we don't do it through a fork. Okay, that is more or less what I wanted to say from my perspective on how we could, what the struggles are, like where the bottlenecks are. I'd be happy to field questions about that process for how things happen behind the scenes. If you have any questions, then no. For everyone, that's more or less clear. Then, Sasha, would you like to show something about what you think the future might look like?
So I will just make a little bit a point about where we are today in MVC Pipeline, and then after give you some maybe refresh from what needs to be done to go to .NET Core. Actually, the MVC Pipeline is...
Apparently he can't hear you. Take this one.
Because the MVC Pipeline had some two goals, I will say, has some features, new features that you can already use in DNN with the MVC Pipeline, and second goal was to have a step to .NET Core. So actually, that's, I think, the most important features that we get in the MVC Pipeline that we can sell to our customers in some way. The pipeline gives you cleaner HTML that generate a better Google page speed and a better score on best practices. Otherwise, it gives you the possibility to create strict content security policy on your websites. For some use cases, it can be important. And the last one is that you have now the possibility to create Razor skin and also Razor-based modules. Just to have a point, I and Peter are already paid for the contribution that we done here. for the number a certain number of hours that we estimate in September. In reality, we are paid for that hours, but in reality, we spent a lot more hours than the hours that we are paid. To give you some numbers, actually, from the previous DNN-Connect in May until September, we spent on, about 2 hours a week just for meetings to making the requirements until September. And until September, from September until end November, we've done some development, but also weekly meetings, 2 hours. And it was not so much anymore for development, but more for trying to find some ways to who we do it best to make the pull request, we restructure the pull request, and so on. But now we are at a certain point that we hope that we get this included in the core, and we have some real features also that you can use in the future. The second goal was to have a step further to .NET Core. And if we want to go forward to that, we surely need some more sponsorship. It's too much work to do that all for free. So we surely need a new commitment from the sponsors if they want to sponsor also that part. Initially, the sponsorship for the .NET Core was from you sponsors, but also part from DNN-Connect directly. And then the idea is to commit to some kind of roadmap for that DNN Core version. There are maybe 2 alternatives. First alternative is to wait the release of DNN 11 with the pipeline, and only after that start with some work on the .NET Core version, or maybe start earlier from today or from earlier than the release of V11. So we have the idea is to discuss that maybe the next hour to share your ideas about that. And if we go a little bit more in detail about the challenges to make a .NET Core version, I think there are 3 kinds of challenges. More technical challenges, maybe community challenges that Peter speak already a little bit, who we will manage that, and surely financial challenges for the development of .NET Core, maybe also challenges to get a more recurring income for the project. Actually, even DNN have no income from the DNN store, from nowhere in reality. But thinking about who we can create some way to have some recurring income for the DNN in general is surely a challenge. So I go a little bit in detail about the technical challenge. The idea of DNN Core was to maintain all the existing DNN feature and functionality while modernizing the underlying technology. And also enable cross-platform deployment. Thanks to .NET Core, the idea was to also modernize DNN to have the possibility to run on the different platforms that that include, for example, that you need to care about the case of the folder names, because in Linux they are case sensitive. In .NET Core, not all libraries are cross-platforms, so you need to be sure to choose libraries that are cross-platforms. And for example, in DNN actually we use Quick I/O for file access. It is not compatible with Linux, so need to be replaced. And third goal was to increase performance and security, also thanks to the features, some features of DNN Core, and ensure backward compatibility where possible, and that will be done mostly thanks to stay on the same database schema, same database as before, and also to stay on the same user interface. It's only the backend code that change, and also the way modules and skills need to be developed. And that was the goals. That were the goals I present already previous year. So the change that need to be done to go to .NET Core, we have to remove all the web forms, remove the dependencies on web forms, and migrate everything to pure MVC architecture. All the web forms need to be converted to Vue components. The framework will be migrated to .NET 10 long-term version, and where possible, we will convert the project to .NET Standard. A big thing was the replacement of membership provider with ASP.Identity Core, which was already done in my proof of concept. We have to change some image processing, because the standard image processing of .NET is not compatible also with Linux. So we have to change this to a library like Image Sharp. We have to replace the way caching works in DNN, because the way of done in .NET Framework is not present in .NET Core, but there exists some other caching mechanism in .NET Core. And that I speak already about that. More the infrastructure challenges that need to be addressed is the file system structure in .NET Core is very different than in .NET Framework. I can illustrate it here a little bit. This is typically a folder structure of a .NET Core project, and the big change is that we there have a www root folder. And this folder is the only folder where we can put public accessible files. So we cannot anymore, for example, in the desktop folder, mixed CSS files with Razor files, for example, and that not need to be public accessible. So
the difference is between currently we have the filter everything is in www root, www root, and then it's filtered by file extension. And now the better approach is anything what should not be accessible is outside of the www root.
This improves security, but it will force to restructure a lot of files in DNN. The other thing that we can see also, we have no web.config anymore. We have app settings in the plates but we can put a lot of settings there. That's about file access pattern. Yes, I speak already. We need to make the file system compatible with Linux also. So we have to be care about some stuff. The other big thing is the dynamic loading of extensions in .NET Core work a very different way. You know, in .NET Framework, if you want to load an extension, you just put a DLL in the bin folder and the system will load the DLL, and everything will load it in the assemblies from your application. Everything will pick up automatically. In .NET Core, that exists not anymore. If you want, you can load also assemblies dynamically, but they need to be loaded by yourself. So you have to include some mechanism in DNN that will scan the folder, see the DLLs, and load the DLLs one by one in an assembly. And you have there also two kind of, you can load your assemblies in the default context, so you get a little bit the same result as now. So all the classes of your dynamic loaded assembly comes in the same pool of the other classes of your application, or you can use a custom context, and your assemblies will load it apart from the default context, from the main application. Everything is isolated, but one class that is dynamically loaded cannot see a class of the default context of the whole DNN application, and then you can work with shared interfaces that can make it possible to communicate between the two. And it's a little bit more complicated for the communication, but it's also more secure, but because dynamically loading assemblies cannot influence the core, for example. And that is one of the big challenges when we go to .NET Core. Another thing that's maybe also related to the file structure, because we have one feature in .NET Core that is that make packaging of extensions can work very different and maybe a lot more efficient, because in .NET Core there exists a way to embed on your DNN installation. Everything is, all the files are deployed separately. In .NET Core you have the possibility on build time of in your Visual Studio that all your CSS files, Razor files, everything is included in your DLL. So in reality, you even maybe not need a zip file to deploy your module, because everything is already in one file. And you can use, there exists some kind of file providers in .NET Core that make it, for your application, it make no difference if your files are on the file system or they are present in a DLL. They just see it as a file system, your DLL. So this is surely something that we can maybe benefit of it. The third part, where some really change occurs, are for all what related to web APIs and Razor controllers. In .NET Framework, web APIs and MVC controller are really two different things. In .NET Core, we have only one routing system for the two. They are shared, but that will also say that we can have clashes between the two if we don't handle the routing very nice. And the router in .NET Core is very different than the router that we, for example, use for web API in .NET Framework. It works very different, so we need to reorganize a little bit some stuff around that. And the last part is also you don't have HTTP modules and HTTP handlers anymore. And in .NET DNN there are some, I think maybe 10 HTTP modules for URL rewriter, for IP filtering, for authentication. I think it uses also a little bit of HTTP module and so on. They normally need to be replaced with a new system in .NET Core that is called middleware. It's very equivalent, but it's work a little bit different. Yes. Yes. This is an example about what I just explained for that kind of DLLs that can include a CSS file, Razor file, and so on. This is a new project file in .NET Core that is called Razor Class Library. This kind of library, they can include CSS file, Razor file, everything in the same DLL. Even you can just create a www root in your class library, and when you deploy that on your application, they just see it if the files are in your normal www root folder of your application. So now I speak a little bit about the essence, that what we need to do to have a version in .NET Core of DNN, but I would say a minimal version of DNN in .NET Core, but in reality there are a lot more challenges or a lot more things that are possible in .NET Core that maybe can be done, maybe in a later phase, or maybe not. I here just make a list of things that maybe will be, maybe at some point become interesting to do also, is to change the data access layer and to go to entity framework from .NET Core. It's something that is very often used from .NET Core developers. And that gives you automatically also the possibility to use a different database than SQL Server, like PostgreSQL is automatically and very well compatible in entity framework. Other things more performance related is to go to more async way to programming in DNN. Actually, not a lot is done in async way because in .NET Framework it's not very often used, but in .NET Core, a lot of even the standard Microsoft libraries are implemented with async. So, and it's not in reality a good practice to mix async and not async. So it will be surely at some point interesting to port also a code of DNN to use async. Another idea was to also remove jQuery from DNN. At these days, it has not really sense anymore to use jQuery because our browsers have Anouk functionalities in JavaScript to do everything that was present in jQuery, and it just make your pages lighter and faster in reality, and to not use jQuery. Another thing is to enhance the possible deployment of infrastructure, to have the possibility to deploy to Docker, to other web apps. And even more, it's to work with immutable images. When you work with Docker, even with Azure web apps, you have the possibility to work with immutable images. That means that your code you deploy on your container is 100% read-only. And that means you can even not install a new model on it because it's really 100% read-only. That gives a lot more security because a hacker cannot anymore put a file on your system and write something on your system. That is something that you see more and more in the application to make it more secure. Other thing is to support more cloud-like storages, also to have the possibility. This is also something that is more and more used to not need to have right access to your same environment than your code. If you don't store any more files on the same place as your code, like your container, then you need to use an alternative way to store your files. Other thing is to use of CI/DI for deployment. Other point is about security. Have a more separation in the file structure about what is static and what is dynamic, so we can have different folder permissions. Actually, we give on the whole DNN installation read-write file access, which is not really good practices, but you cannot do another way because everything is mixed. The dynamic parts and the static parts are mixed, so it will surely be better approach to separate a little bit which is static and which is dynamic, so we can have some folders in read-only and other in read-write. Separation about private and public, we speak already about that. I think I have some points there, but I think we speak already about that stuff. Development infrastructure. Yes, maybe the last point also. In .NET Core, there is a new way to do static localization, and that's not the same that we know already, that we use actually in DNN. And it will be maybe an option at some point to migrate also to more standard Microsoft way of doing static localization, and maybe if we want to customize some localization on the website, more using a database storage, for example. So that was it.